Well, after more than a week away from games, the Indiana Fever got back to it on Sunday evening on the road in Las Vegas to begin a 4-game road trip. I'm Scott Agness of FieldhouseFiles.com. Thanks to everyone for joining me here. And make sure you are subscribed at FieldhouseFiles.com and at Fieldhouse Files on YouTube and the Fever Files podcast. Okay, an 84-68 win for the Fever. And yeah, that second number is what stands out probably more than anything in this one, because they held the Aces to a season-low 68 points in a season in which the Fever are giving up more points than almost any team out there, like 95 points per game, nearly 100. And remember, in 6 of their 8 losses, they've given up at least 100 points. So right away, you see that number at 68, you would think that's a Fever win, and it absolutely was. A game they led by as many as 18 points, 12 lead changes, 7 ties in this one, but it was primarily Fever the entire way, as they were led by Kelsey Mitchell's 27 points, 7 of 18 shooting, 10 of 12 at the free throw line, as she reached over 20 points in their 4th straight outing. And this didn't get as near as much coverage as I believe it deserved, given how seismic it was last fall, how impactful it was to the team, how impactful and new it was to her. But for Kelsey Mitchell, it was her first time going back to the desert there in Las Vegas. And since her body said, no more, we're done. That was in the final quarter of Game 5 of the semifinals rounds between the Fever and the Aces. Her body said no more. It gave up on her on that moment. And she kind of hobbled off. They put her on a wheelchair briefly. And then she went to the hospital there in Las Vegas during that playoff game. And Leah Boston, fouled out, and they got to overtime, but did just not have enough. Obviously, no Caitlin Clark, no Sophie Cunningham. Several different players were down at that point for the season, on top of Kelsey Mitchell going out, Leah Boston fouling out there in what could have been a stunning Fever advance to the WNBA finals there, because Aces went on to win there and have their way. But nonetheless, I thought that was a significant thing for Kelsey Mitchell to go back there, go back to the team hotel, to go back in that environment. And fortunately, it did not, at least outwardly, appear to bother her. It's not something that she said post-game it was really that big a deal, maybe. Probably because they did not go back to the same venue where it happened, where you have the same locker room and same entrance and all those things. That probably would bring up those memories. So we'll see later on in the week. A lot to cover with Kelsey, because she's having a really good season. Again, was named to not just the All-Star game, but an All-Star starter, as was Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston late last week. No surprise there. I'm curious, though, what the official numbers were there in terms of voting, just because in the first couple of ballots, voting was down all across the board. And it started essentially with that first group, the first returns, I should say, and the Fever numbers were way down with Caitlin and Aaliyah and Kelsey. But I think Fever fans and Caitlin fans really showed up for that second ballot. And then they quickly announced starters soon after, as the All-Star game will be held, July 24th, 25th, that time frame, that Friday, Saturday in Chicago. And we'll get into that more later on. But I thought Kelsey Mitchell probably playing with a little something on her shoulders a little bit, not just a chip, but like an emotion after what she experienced leaving last year. She balled out, did very well, and did exactly what this Fever team needed, and helping to carry them for the second straight game with Caitlin Clark, who remains out as they're managing this back issue that she has dealt with and has had, I think, for a while. We don't know specifically what it is or the pain threshold or whatever, but we do know back has been something that has bothered her for some time. And we know certainly throughout this entirety of the season, always wearing that black heat pad around her waist when she is on the bench, as are several other players, by the way, on the Fever bench. Aaliyah Boston with the double-double, 18 points, 10 rebounds, as I'll pull up the box score so those watching online are able to see what I'm talking about a little bit there. No Damiris Dantas yet again. Feels like she is just outside the rotation and is not playing a ton. I mean, even Grace Van Slooten got in for a couple of garbage time minutes there late. Kayla Timpson sometimes plays more minutes, sometimes less. And this one, it was just about 8 minutes. Hines Allen didn't score until very late in the game, final couple minutes. So really the only main bench contributions from a scoring standpoint that they got was Sophie Cunningham, and she knocked down 3 big three-pointers, including a couple that were like from 26, 28 feet there. She's really continued to add to her confidence, I think, that we've seen from her that really started right around the Commissioner Cup play. And then she was incredible, right? I think she was like 80% from three-point range during much of that stretch. I'd like to see Lexi Hall get a couple more looks and also make a couple more looks from three-point range, because she can be a reliable, she is a reliable threat from three-point range. And this one finished with 10 points, but all those field goals coming inside the arc. Had a couple of buzzer beaters, one to close the first half, which gave the Fever a small lead, and then also had one there late in the fourth quarter as well, with the shot clock winding down. So she's certainly grown in her confidence as well. A really good shooter and obviously a defender, communicator, player that does just about everything for this team. Now, Ty Harris, the veteran guard, continues to start, does the second straight game with Clark's sideline, and I think that's a matter of two things. One, it's bringing in a veteran who knows what they want with Stephanie White's offense. She's played for her now for at least 3 years, did a couple of years there in Connecticut, knows what is wanted in this system. And then also it allows for the rookie, Raven Johnson, to not have to overthink, to not be put in an entirely new situation, but instead to keep Raven Johnson with that bench unit. By doing so, everyone should be a little bit more comfortable here within the offense. Now, you can see how impactful Asia Wilson is for this Aces team, and directly impacts them in so many different ways. They couldn't shoot it well, didn't shoot it well from outside. We're not a threat on second chance opportunities, a stat the Fever won 13-2. Remarkable. Paints in the points. That should be an area where the Aces dominate. That was net negative, or net, that was a wash. Neither team won that category. Fever finishing with the season low turnovers, just 7. It only led to 8 points. And by the way, 3 of those in the fourth quarter, one of them in the final minute. So this team really only turned it over about half dozen times in this one. That led to them getting 15 more shot opportunities than this Aces team. Free throws, really about the same, which generally means it was probably a good officiated game there. And by the way, you see the time, top right of the box score, it only took 2 hours. Remember, they've had games where they've had quarters last about 40 minutes, games last 2.5, 2:45, and this game was nationally televised, as they all are. This one on ESPN, as well as Disney Plus, to hit a whole different audience. But overall, I mean, Fever 1 rebounding, assists were a little lower than I think they're used to. That's a large part Caitlin Clark being out, right? She's good for roughly 10 assists per game, and they finished with 18 assists on 30 field goals. I think it's one of those situations, just with Clark out, everyone knows what exactly is expected of them, and they can kind of star in that role, versus when Clark's out there, there's so much unpredictability. There's so much highlights and theatrics and creative plays that no one else can kind of help produce, but that also leads to some chaos, and I mean that in a good way. That's something that they try to capitalize off of, right? And in creating chaos and then going down and scoring at the other end, or getting a lot of screens that set up an outside shot, or attract 2 defenders, and you send the pocket pass to, say, Aaliyah Boston, who can knock down the 3, as we've seen, or she can go into the lane and finish. I thought it was interesting that throughout the broadcast, they were really harping on the storyline about how Aaliyah Boston has evolved her game as a three-point shooter more than anything. How she's taken, I think 40% of her shots roughly are from outside the arc now. In this game, she took 4 3-pointers, made 3 of them, by the way, and was 7 of 13 from the field. If you can get Boston to make 3 3-pointers for a game, I don't think you're going to lose that game, right? That generally skews very well, I think, for this Fever team. There was some bad moments, right? A couple poor decisions. There was that fourth quarter stretch of what felt like about 4 minutes when they couldn't score offensively, and then had some issues defensively as well. And I really like that timeout Stephanie White used. They basically gave up a wide open shot that should have been points for the Aces. They missed it. And then she went out on the court, called timeout, and said, no more. We cannot tolerate that. The standard is the standard. And so this was another good win for the Fever team, who are now 12-8 on the season. They're continuing to rise up the rankings. And right now, this is the start of a 4-game road trip. After this 84-68 win, the team immediately made the short flight less than an hour from Vegas to Los Angeles, where they could enjoy, 3 nights at least? Or no, total. 3 nights, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, because then Wednesday they will play. And then after having one game in basically 2 weeks, then the Fever play a back-to-back. The featured game, of course, Wednesday night. No surprise there, USA Sports. But then after playing the LA Sparks, then they go Thursday on to Phoenix, where that'll be probably an emotional game, given all that's been said and all that happened. I wonder if Caitlin Clark will try to play in that front end of the back-to-back. She loves playing in LA. A lot of stars show out. Her best friend's on the other team, and Kate Martin, and congratulations to her, because here on Monday, Kate Martin, after 2 months on a player development contract with the Sparks, was converted into a standard contract. So big moment for her. I'm sure her and Clark will be having dinner at least once, maybe a couple times here over the next couple days to celebrate. I wondered if Clark would get an invitation and make it over to New York and Madison Square Garden for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey's wedding over the weekend. It seemed like it was a who's who of weddings right there. Of individuals that participated, showed up. I mean, when you have 1,000 guests, that will happen. But I think this was another move forward for the Fever after they had 2 really hard, difficult, intense practices last week, then a couple more that were lighter. Caitlin Clark has participated in at least one, maybe a couple practices in the last few weeks. Also gotten in some individual work as well, as they just continue to make sure she was right as they manage that back issue and make sure she is good to go for the long haul. As I've been stressing all along with her and the others on this team, is they want to make sure you're there for the length of the season, not just 1 week or 2 weeks here. The purpose is to be available, especially when it counts late in the season and going into the playoffs. So that's exactly what they are doing here. And I think that's also what we heard from Becky Hammon about A'ja Wilson. Yeah, if it was a playoff game, Wilson could have played, but what's the point here? You got a couple weeks push here to get to All-Star weekend, and then it's the second half of the season, as we're already 20 games in, approaching the midway point of the season. Officiating clearly the number one subject, I think, across the league, and the inconsistencies and the accountability and all those different things that I need to write about as well, by the way, at fieldhousefiles.com. A lot of good comments about that and trying to improve upon that. By the way, though, if you're new to the league, that's fine. Officiating has been an issue with the league from the very beginning. So nothing new. It's just intensified because of the number of eyes that are on the Fever, but especially this league as a whole. So Fever get it done, 84-68 Sunday night, 12th win of the season. They're already in LA to play the Sparks coming up Wednesday evening. I'll have more after that one. And otherwise, I will talk to you all again soon. Have a great week after a very happy 4th of July.